Good afternoon. I'm Annette Vanderveer with the DeKalb County Human Services Department. And I'm very excited today. We have Tanya Jones, who is a realtor, and she's going to talk about using down payment assistance to buy your first home. Before I introduce Ms. Tanya Jones, I want to say welcome to our Lunch and Learn series. We've been doing Lunch and Learns now for about a couple of years. We're excited to bring you different speakers every month. And we are so excited that you could join us today and learn about the various products that she has. Let me tell you a little bit about Miss Tanya Jones. She has been a Georgia licensed real estate agent since 2004. She's a member of the DeKalb Association of Realtors and the Women's Council of Realtors. Tanya focuses on working with first-time home buyers and is a specialist in affordable housing and down payment assistance. Tanya believes that home ownership matters and that home ownership is the foundation to building wealth. Her company is Atlanta Metro Properties. We will take your questions at the end. At this point, please welcome Ms. Tanya Jones.
Thank you so much, Miss Annette. I really appreciate the invitation and the opportunity to be here. So I'm so excited to talk about my favorite subject, which is home ownership, and more specifically talking about using down payment assistance to buy your first home. I think it's so important in DeKalb County for us to build home ownership. And I think there are so many assistance programs out here, but the challenge is not a lot of people know about them. So that's where I hope I can help today. So using down payment assistance to buy your first home. So Miss Annette has already introduced me. I've been licensed as a real estate agent in Georgia since 2004, and I do specialize in helping first-time home buyers achieve their dream of home ownership with as little stress as possible. Because, of course, buying a home can be a little bit challenging, but if you have the right guidance, if you have somebody to hold your hand and be with you along the journey, it makes it so much better. And it can be a whole lot of fun. So let's get into it. So I always tell people that before you do anything, before you do any house hunting, before you even think about going out to look at a house or calling anybody, check your own credit report. Check your credit. You can get a free credit report from all of the three major credit reporting agencies, Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion, just by going to annualcreditreport.com. So this is a really important step because there might be something on your credit report that's a mistake, something that shouldn't even be there. So if you check your own credit report first, you have a chance to correct it before you go out and you fall in love with a home and you've got some kind of credit issue that you could easily correct. So check your credit, annualcreditreport.com. Okay, so that's first thing. Next thing, create a budget. So sit down and look at what you realistically have. What do you have coming in every month? So what are your expenses? What's your income? And also make sure you don't take out any new debt when you're thinking about buying a home. So don't open up any new charge accounts, no new credit cards. And above all else, please do not go out and buy a car. I have seen this mess up many deals. The homeowner said, I'm sorry, the home buyer said, you know what, I need a car. I've got to go get a car. My car is having problems. Don't do that when you're about to buy a home, if you can help it, because that is going to make your debt to income ratio go up. And when you're preparing to buy a home, you want your debt to be as low as possible, preferably about 10% of what your credit limit is. So let's say you've got a credit card with $1,000 credit limit. You want that credit card balance to be not more than $100. And some lenders will say maybe 30%, so not more than $300. But I always say better safe than sorry. So get those expenses down as low as you possibly can. Get those debts down. So if you can say 10% of your credit limit, that is even better. And work with a realtor. Find a real estate professional who understands you and somebody who's going to take the time. Like I mentioned, the journey to home ownership can be so much more pleasant when you have somebody who's going to take the time with you and hold your hand and really just guide you through the process. So, find a real estate agent who's patient and appreciates the opportunity to work with you, because there are thousands of real estate agents across the Atlanta metro area. So you can pick the person that you like. You can pick the person who makes you feel comfortable. I would say make sure that real estate agent is a realtor, because all realtors are real estate agents, because being a real estate agent just involves you getting a license, but being a realtor involves a membership, and it involves that person being held to a higher standard. So make sure your real estate agent is a realtor. Now, what is the down payment? So that's an important thing. What is the down payment? The down payment is the amount that the buyer pays at closing that goes towards the purchase price, right? The down payment, it shows that the home buyer has some stake in the home. Also, we call that having some skin in the game. It shows the lender that you're serious, that you're really invested in buying this home, and it reduces the likelihood that you're going to default because you put some money in. So now a lot of people think, oh, I've got to put down 20%. No, you don't. You can get an FHA loan with 3.5% down. There are some conventional loans that offer buyers an opportunity to just put 3% down. So it doesn't have to be 20% down. Now, why is the down payment important? The down payment is important because it helps to reduce the lender's risk when loaning money to a home buyer. So even though you don't have to have the 20% down, putting down 20% does eliminate the mortgage interest, the mortgage insurance premium on an FHA loan, or the private mortgage insurance on a conventional loan. So what is mortgage insurance? Mortgage insurance is what gives the lender a little more comfort in the event that you do default. Back in the recession days, lenders lost a lot because there were several home buyers in default. So, if there was a loan that was backed by FHA, which is a government agency, the lender was paid back. So the lender was covered if there was an FHA loan. But on a conventional loan, the loan wasn't always covered. So now that we're out of the recession, buyers are back on the block, and lenders are really lending again. Those guidelines are much stricter, and there is mortgage insurance or private mortgage insurance required. Now that's a small amount every month, but it does come out of your mortgage payment, and that is just a little guarantee to the coverage to the lender in the event that you default. But if you put down 20% or more, the mortgage insurance goes away. But who has 20% to put down? So that's kind of rare for somebody to put 20% down. So just about everybody has mortgage insurance. Now, what is down payment assistance? So down payment assistance, according to homebuyer.com, it is when a government agency, community organization, or the mortgage lender gives a first-time buyer cash grants or a lower mortgage rate or tax incentives to purchase a home. Now, these grants, it can be a grant, it could be a second mortgage loan that is held silently, like the Georgia Dream has a silent second mortgage, but we're going to get to that shortly. So that's what down payment assistance is. It's just to help that home buyer get into home ownership by giving them a boost, giving them a grant or a second mortgage or a tax incentive to purchase their home. So what are the benefits? So the biggest benefit of down payment assistance is to really promote home ownership. And we all know that when communities have a higher rate of home ownership, they tend to be better. They tend to be a little more stable. They tend to be safer. They tend to even have a stronger school community. When there's home ownership, you're not looking at people coming in and out and in and out. You're looking at people who really care about the community, and home ownership matters. So it is important for us to promote home ownership and to stabilize neighborhoods. So who can get down payment assistance? Typically, you must have a credit score of at least 640. A first-time buyer is somebody who has not owned a home ever, or at least in the past 3 years. That's what is considered a first-time home buyer. And also, in order to get down payment assistance, you cannot have a whole lot of debt. You cannot have high debt to income. So that's to say that if your income is $6,000 a month, you cannot have expenses of $5,800 a month and only have $200 left. You've got to have a pretty low debt to income. And also, your employment needs to be stable. Your income needs to be sufficient and verifiable. I've had people call me and say, hey, I've got the income, but, I'm in a cash business, or, I'm a truck driver and I don't have the paycheck stubs. So, you've got to have some way to verify that income if you want to get down payment assistance. You've got to have tax returns, things like that. Maybe you have a 1099 if you're a contract worker. But those are things that we're going to get to a little bit later on. But yes, the income does have to be able to be verified. So here are some different down payment assistance programs. And I'm only going to talk about a few because there are so many down payment assistance programs. You know, these few that I'm going to talk about, these are just the ones that are pretty popular. But the number one program that I like to use to help first-time home buyers is the Georgia Dream program. So the Georgia Dream, it's for home buyers in certain counties in Georgia, but for the major Atlanta metro, Georgia Dream covers just about everything here. Minimum credit score, 640. You've got to put at least $1,000 in of your own money, which, you know, if you paid $1,000 in earnest money, your earnest money deposit, which is due when you present your offer, then, or once your offer is accepted, then that pretty much covers that $1,000 requirement. So the household income must meet the requirements. So you can't make too much. There's a chart that I can connect you with, that I can show you, that shows, okay, if you have this many people in your household, your income cannot be higher than a certain amount. So I'd be happy to share that information with you. And also, the Georgia Dream program, it offers up to $10,000 in down payment assistance to first-time home buyers. And then also, it's up to $12,500 for home buyers who are in law enforcement, education, or healthcare. So any nurses, nursing assistants, doctors, medical techs, things like that, teachers, teaching assistants, principals, police officers, anybody who works for the sheriff's department, things like that. That's $12,500. But if you don't work in any of those fields, then you're still eligible for $10,000. So, and that $10,000 can go toward your down payment, or it can also go toward closing costs. So the Georgia Dream Down Payment Assistance Program is held as what we call a silent second mortgage. So it doesn't have any payments due until the home is sold or until it's refinanced. So so that $10,000 or $12,500, it just kind of sits silently in the background. You don't have to make any payments on it. But if you decide to sell your home, you do have to pay that back. Okay, so that's the Georgia Dream. So the Weed to Cab program, this is another good one. This is for DeKalb County home buyers. That minimum credit score is 660. So if you're eligible for that program, you can get a non-repayable down payment assistance grant. Now, this is a grant, meaning it does not have to be paid back, and it'll either be 1%, 2%, or 3% of the initial principal balance of the mortgage. So if your principal balance of the mortgage is $300,000, it'll be a $3,000 grant, depending on the loan program that you have and the mortgage rate. So this grant can be used for down payment, or it can be used towards your closing costs. And now the only thing with the We DeKalb program is that the mortgage rates are a little bit higher than market rate. So if the market rate, interest rate is, let's say it's 6%, or maybe it's 6.5%. So then the We DeKalb interest rate might be maybe 6.25. So it might be a little bit higher. So that's the only thing. But it's worth it if you can get a house that you can afford, something that's within your budget, a home that you love, and it helps you get your foot in the door of home ownership. And if you have 2% grant or 3% grant on a $300,000 house, that's either $6,000 or it's $9,000. So that is a great grant. And like I said, the We DeKalb, that money does not have to be paid back. So Atlanta Housing is another great program that requires a minimum credit score of 620. And again, you've got to be a first-time home buyer. Now on the We DeKalb, you don't have to be a first-time home buyer. You just cannot own a home at the time that you're getting the program. But Atlanta Housing, you've got to be a first-time home buyer, or you haven't owned a home in the past 3 years. So that property must be within the city of Atlanta limits. Now, if you're buying in DeKalb County, we know there are parts of DeKalb that are within city of Atlanta limits. You know, think about like the Gresham Park area. That is city of Atlanta, but it is DeKalb County. So you could buy a house in Gresham Park, right off Gresham Road, and that area, it is really, it's coming up. There are a lot of, renovated homes. There are a lot of just nice move-in ready homes, great for first-time home buyers in that community. And you could realistically get a home for maybe, 300, maybe a little bit less, and get the Atlanta Housing Grant. Now, your liquid assets cannot be more than $25,000, and your assistance with the Atlanta Housing Grant can be up to $20,000 and up to $25,000 for those home buyers in healthcare, law enforcement. I'm sorry, that should be healthcare, law enforcement, or education. I'm sorry, there's a typo on my presentation. I apologize. So that's healthcare, law enforcement, or education. So again, anybody who works, maybe they're a surgical tech or something like that. Maybe they're a police officer, or they work for, like I said, the sheriff's department, or they're a principal of a school, an assistant principal, a teacher's aide. Those people, those employees can get up to $25,000, and that's a great grant, because that's something that you can get and use that towards your down payment and make your mortgage payment a lot lower than it would be if you didn't have those funds. Now, this program, the Chenoa Fund, this is not real popular, but I wanted to include this because it's something different, it's something unique. You don't hear about it a lot, but the funds are out there. On the Chenoa Fund, that has a minimum credit score of 600, right? You don't have to be a first-time home buyer. They offer two options. They offer a forgivable down payment assistance option and a repayable down payment assistance option. So with the repayable, there's no income limit, and that one sits as a 10-year second mortgage. So you do have to make payments on it, but you can have any income. It doesn't matter what your income is, you just have to meet the requirements. And so, it could be maybe you're paying for $10,000 as a second mortgage, and this has given you an opportunity to get into the house without putting any down payment. You've got the down payment assistance from the Chenoa Fund. Now, they also have a forgivable assistance, and that's 3.5%. So that's a grant of 3.5%. It does have an income limit. It's forgivable after 3 months of consecutive on-time payments. So I've got some additional information on the Chenoa Fund if you want to connect with me after the presentation, but that's something to look out for. So now that you know about different down payment assistance programs, now keep in mind that there are a whole lot more. There are some banks, there are some credit unions that have their own down payment assistance. I know Truist has like a $6,000 grant. I think Wells Fargo has a $10,000 grant. So there are a lot of down payment assistance programs out here. Like I said at the beginning, the problem is we don't know about them in our community. So that's where having a great realtor to help you and guide you, it's very, very useful. So now, putting your team together, who are the professionals who can help you accomplish this goal of becoming a homeowner? First and foremost, your realtor, right? Because your realtor is going to do the legwork. The realtor is going to help you find the home, navigate through all the purchase documentation and the closing process. Now, a lot of people say, oh, the realtor is just opening the doors. But we do so much more than just opening the doors. We have to find out, what is available? What does the market look like? What are different neighborhoods selling for? You might tell me that you want to live in North DeKalb, but your budget is South DeKalb. So now we have to have, a conversation about what that really looks like, and try to find some middle ground. Maybe we find your house within your budget in Stone Mountain. Maybe you can be close to North DeKalb, but you can still get something affordable. So or maybe you're in North DeKalb and maybe that looks like maybe it's a townhouse, as long as it fits your budget and it's a home that makes you happy. So realtors do a lot more than just opening the doors. Like I said, we have to figure out what's going on with the market and be able to relay that information to our clients. We have to help navigate home buyers through the paperwork, the documentation. We have to negotiate on your behalf, because just like we're working on the buyer's behalf, there's another realtor on the other side working on the seller's behalf. So we have to know how to negotiate, communicate, and navigate. Who else is on your team? Your mortgage loan officer. Now, your mortgage loan officer is going to help you with all things pertaining to financing the home and getting that loan and your down payment assistance. That mortgage loan officer is going to ask you for all your documentation. They're going to give you the loan approval as long as you qualify. They'll help you figure out what down payment options are available for you. Maybe there's a loan officer that has a 100% financing program. Maybe that's the route you decide to take rather than getting down payment assistance. So, some loan officers might have access to certain down payment assistance programs, and some other loan officers might have access to other down payment assistance programs. So, I think it's good to at least speak to a couple of different loan officers. Now, what about the housing counselor? Now, that can be optional. If that's something that's good, if you do that at the very beginning. You say, hey, I want to speak to somebody to, take a class and find out what I need to do to even become a homeowner. Now, your realtor can help you through a lot of that, but some people do want to go through a housing counseling course. Now, I will tell you that once you start the process and you've got your realtor, you've got your mortgage loan officer, some of those education pieces can be taken online. So you don't have to go and sit in a classroom. A lot of that can be taken online. As you continue moving forward with that mortgage loan officer, they will give you a website to go to, and just take the class virtually. So that is a good thing. So you don't have to worry about taking a class, because once you've connected with a mortgage loan officer, they will tell you how to proceed and what you need to do to qualify to get that down payment assistance. And like I said, it might require you taking a virtual class, but it's just a few hours. You can do it at your desk. You can do it at your home. So, like I said, speak with some mortgage loan officers. I really like for people to talk to at least two different mortgage loan officers. Find out about the fees, find out about the rates. That's something that's important to do before you go out and look at any homes, because you want to find out how much do you qualify to buy. What is your possible mortgage payment? If you buy a house at 300, what does that mortgage payment look like? The mortgage loan officer will take into consideration, what are the taxes in this area? The estimated property taxes. What's the estimated homeowners in insurance? So of course you have to have homeowners insurance. That's something really important. Now you're not going to get a mortgage loan without having insurance. So whoever you want to use, whether you want to use State Farm, Liberty Mutual, Travelers, or whatever homeowners insurance company you want to use. That's entirely up to you. Lots of times people like to use whoever they have their car insurance through. Some people have renters insurance, so they like to go with who they have their renters insurance through to get their homeowners insurance. But the mortgage loan officer will just look at the numbers and give you an estimate. It can't be an exact number, because we haven't found the house yet. Once we find the house, then the loan officer can tell you more about what that mortgage payment is going to look like. But still, it won't be exact, because they still have to go through the whole process of underwriting and things like that. Now, when you're speaking with the mortgage loan officers, ask about their down payment assistance programs. What special loan programs do they offer? Do they have a 100% financing program? I will tell you, on a 100% financing program, that interest rate is going to be higher, because it's 100% financing. You didn't bring any money to put toward your down payment. So that interest rate is going to be a little bit higher. And also find out if the loan officer offers any special discounts. Some loan officers might have a rebate that they can offer, especially as we're getting to a time where there aren't as many loan applications. Buyers are kind of taking a back seat right now until they figure out what the economy is doing. But this is the time to really get out, because I'm going to tell you in a couple of slides, I'm going to tell you that we're kind of leaning toward getting into a buyer's market right now. So this is the time. Also, when you're working with a mortgage loan officer and you're talking to a few different loan officers, don't be afraid to get your credit pulled a couple of times. So it doesn't lower your credit score when you're shopping for a mortgage within a few weeks' time. So, if you speak with a loan officer from one company on Wednesday and they give you a number, and then maybe on Friday you talk with another loan officer and they give you a number. So yeah, they do have to pull your credit, but it is not going to give you a big hit to your credit score, like if you were shopping for a mortgage in January and then you did it again in March and then again in April. So do that within a short period of time. It counts as one credit pull, and it does not hurt your credit. So what documentation is needed? What does that mortgage loan officer ask you for? So if you're ready to become a homeowner, start getting all this stuff together. Paycheck stubs, bank statements, tax returns. So they'll probably ask for paycheck stubs for the past 60 days, bank statements for the past 60 days, tax returns for the past 2 years. If you don't have paycheck stubs and you're an independent contractor, they'll want to see your 1099s for the past 2 years. They've got to see that you have sufficient income, and that income has to be able to be verified. And another thing that the mortgage loan officer might ask you for is an explanation letter for anything unusual. If you had a period of time where, you know, you were out of work for a short period of time, uh, that kind of thing. You want to write a letter explaining that you changed jobs. So try not to change jobs during the home buying process. But you know, if you had to change jobs, if you got a promotion, you know, if you transferred to a different department, something like that, you know, left one company and went to another, those kinds of things might require an explanation letter. Okay. Or you know, if there's something that comes up on your credit report, you know, maybe there's a situation with a student loan or something like that. Something like that might require a letter of explanation, so that that loan officer can kind of go to to bat for you with the underwriter and say, hey, here's what happened. Okay. So I want to give you a case study of a recent transaction that I had that turned out great. I helped a first-time home buyer. She bought a townhouse in Decatur, $207,000. So she works in healthcare. I think she's like a CNA, I believe, nursing assistant. So she got $12,500 in down payment assistance through the Georgia Dream program. And I was able to negotiate $9,000 in a closing cost contribution from the seller. So her closing costs would have been maybe a total, maybe probably about $12,000 or so. So she used that $12,500 toward the down payment and for the remainder of her closing costs. So we were able to get her down payment assistance and part of the closing costs through the Georgia Dream program, that $12,000, and $9,000 from the seller. So she only had to bring $540 to closing. And now her monthly mortgage payment is about $1,700. It's actually less than $1,700. So, you know, she's in a great position right now. She's in a great position because that less than $1,700 that she's paying for a nice, clean townhouse, 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, it's less than she was paying for rent. So that was a great situation. And that can happen for you as well. You know, home prices are coming down, and I want to show you that in this next slide. So, as I was saying, the market is shifting in favor of buyers. So between May 1st, 2025 and June 20th, 2025, in DeKalb County, for detached homes priced between $250 and $350, the average sales price was $307. So this is just DeKalb. So this includes all the zip codes in DeKalb. The average list price was $322. So if the houses average sales price was $307, but the house was originally listed for $322, that means sellers are realizing that it's turning into a buyer's market. They're doing price reductions. Price reductions, yes. And some sellers are contributing to closing costs. So these are for detached homes. So this is like, you know, if you wanted to buy a house in, you know, Hidden Hills or Water's Edge or, you know, some community in DeKalb County, you know, sales prices are coming down. And here's the other thing, average days on market is up to 44 days. Do you remember a few years ago when a house would come on the market on a Friday and by Sunday there were like 25 offers, 50 offers on it? Those days are gone. That's over. So homes are staying on the market longer. So that means that you have more of an opportunity. You actually even have more of a selection. There are more homes on the market now than there have been in the past 5 years. So since before the pandemic, really, there are a lot more homes on the market, so you have a lot better selection, and prices are coming down. Like I said, sellers are realizing that this is not the market that we were in 2022. So sellers have had to be more realistic. And while there's still not a tremendous amount of inventory, it is becoming more of a buyer's market. So that's something that you have to look at. Now, let me show you something else. So these are detached homes. Let me show you attached homes. So attached homes, that would be your townhouses, your condos. So between May 1st, 2025 and June 20th, 2025, in DeKalb County, for attached homes, I took that price point down a little lower, between 200,000 and 300,000. Average sales price is 250. Average list price was 260. But look at this. Average days on the market, 65 days. These townhouses and condos in DeKalb are sitting on the market 65 days. So you think the sellers are maybe a little more motivated, that the sellers are like, hey, I need to sell, I need a buyer. You think the buyers might have a little more opportunity right now? Yes. Yes, you definitely have a lot more opportunity right now. Okay, so that's, if you want a townhouse. And DeKalb County has a lot of townhouses for sale. So, of course, the advantage to buying a townhouse is that, you don't have to do the lawn work and things like that. So, starting the house hunting journey. So here are some tips to being a good house hunter, right? Be a good communicator. Ask questions. If there's something on paperwork that you don't understand, ask questions, but be sure to listen, right? Be sure to listen to your agent, to your loan officer. Have an idea of where you want to live, but be realistic. Like I said, if you want to live in Chamblee, you're going to have to pay Chamblee prices, as opposed to if you want to live in Stonecrest. Stonecrest is, of course, going to be more affordable than Chamblee or Tucker. So be realistic about where you want to live as it relates to what your budget is. Be patient and decisive. Now, sometimes it's hard to be both of those things at the same time, to be patient and decisive. So sometimes you might make an offer on something and that seller might not be realistic, right? That seller might have in their mind that their house is worth $375 when maybe you've offered $350, and that's a realistic offer. That's a good offer, because their house in today's market might not really even sell for $375. It might be worth $375, but the saying, price is only an issue in the absence of value. So if that value isn't there, that price becomes really important, because you're looking at what else is selling in the neighborhood. And if the other homes in the neighborhood are selling in the 350s and 360s, 375 doesn't make any sense, even though it might be a great house. But if that's not where the market is, of course, there's some things we cannot control. We cannot control interest rates. We cannot control the location. So that's where I'm saying be patient and decisive. Know where you want to live, but the next thing is be flexible. And remember, there is no perfect house. You might say, hey, I want all these things. I want 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths. I want a formal living room. I want a formal dining room. I want an eat-in kitchen. I want a basement. But if your budget is only $300 or your budget is only $275, you might not be able to get all those things, right? The goal is to become a homeowner, because remember, your first house is not necessarily your last house. So get your foot in the door of home ownership. Your house is going to go up in value over time. And then at some point you might have an opportunity to sell that house and get the house that you really want. But if you continue renting, you're not building any equity. You're not going anywhere, you're standing still. So the goal is to become a homeowner and start building wealth, to start building equity. That's the that's the wonderful thing about home ownership. You can build wealth just by living there and paying your mortgage payment every month because that home is going to go up in value over time. Now, once once we've been house hunting and we find a home that you love, don't ever, ever skip the home inspection. So that is something extremely important because, like I said, there is no perfect house, so you've got to get it inspected. The home inspector works on the buyer's behalf. So in your home buying process, you're going to have a home inspector and you're going to have an appraiser. So it's important to know the difference. The home inspector works on the buyer's behalf. They're going to come and check the house out. The appraiser works on the lender's behalf. So that's the mortgage company. The appraiser is really looking at the value of the home to make sure the home is worth what we have it under contract for. So if we have the home under contract at 350, then that house has to appraise for at least 350. But before that appraisal, we've got this inspection. This inspection is important because the inspector is going to check, electrical, plumbing, roof, heating and air, and a lot of other things in the house to make sure everything is in good working condition. So if things are not, if there's something that bothers you, we can do one of two things. We can terminate that contract and you get your earnest money back, or we can negotiate further. We can do what we call the amendment to address concerns, right? And that is where we put on a form, here are the things that concern the buyer about this home. Here's what I want the seller to address, right? Maybe we want the seller to put in a brand new water heater because that water heater is leaking, or the water heater has rust on the bottom. The water heater is old. Maybe there are some outlets in the house that are not working. Very often when somebody lives in the house, they kind of get used to certain things, and they kind of overlook some of the flaws in the home because it's their home. They live there. So, but when that inspector comes in, that inspector is working on the buyer's behalf. Like I said, that inspector is going to make sure that you know what is happening with that house. And if there's something you're not comfortable with, we can terminate that contract and you get your earnest money back, or we can do that amendment to address your concerns and ask the seller to either make those repairs, or we can negotiate, maybe additional funds toward the closing costs or a reduced price. And then sometimes it doesn't work out and we do just have to terminate if we can't come to an agreement. Now, I would consider adding a termite inspection as well. So you can pay for a termite inspection or ask the seller to provide a clear termite letter. And we're in the South, so termites, it's just a matter of when. It's not even a matter of if you're going to get termites. It's just a matter of when. So your home needs to have some termite protection. That seller might have a clear termite letter, or that seller might have, a current termite warranty. And a termite warranty will probably be transferable to the new owner. So that's something to look for. Don't skip the termite inspection because you might regret it. And the regular inspector, he might see maybe if there's some termite damage, but an actual exterminator, a termite professional can really look for the signs of termite activity or signs of even previous termite activity. And you want to make sure that your home does have termite protection. Now, when we have the clear to close, that is when the mortgage loan underwriter has gotten final approval from the mortgage loan underwriter. Now, the underwriter is somebody who kind of works in secret in the background at the mortgage company. So, you'll never talk to the underwriter. You'll only talk to the mortgage loan officer and the loan processor. You will never speak to an underwriter, but the underwriter might be the most important person on the team when it comes to mortgages, because that underwriter is going to make sure that you've crossed every T and dotted every I, to make sure there are no questions about your paycheck stubs or about your tax returns, and make sure that loan is approved. You know, there's a difference in you've turned in your loan application and you're approved there, but that loan has to get final approval from the underwriter to continue to the clear to close. So that means your loan has received final approval, everything is done, and that mortgage company is about to send the paperwork to the attorney's office, and then that's when you can start getting excited, because we got the clear to close. So now the next thing, you go to closing, you're excited. Make sure you've given your landlord proper notice. Now, once you're confident that your loan is going to be approved, you might have to wire some funds. You might have to wire some money to the closing attorney. Most closing attorneys don't take checks anymore, because there's just so much fraud. So you're going to have to wire funds to the closing attorney. You're going to sign all your documents at the closing attorney's office. You're going to get your keys at the closing attorney's office. And congratulations, you're a homeowner. So that's the time to celebrate. So thank you. Thank you so much for listening. You can get more information on buying a home with down payment assistance. I have a special website. I have a special page on my website, atlantametroproperties.com/0down. So, /0-down. So, thank you so much, and I appreciate you listening. And if I can help you with anything, feel free to call me or text me with your questions. But definitely go to the website. I'll put that up again, atlantametroproperties.com/0-down. So you can get more information on down payment assistance at that website. And here's my contact info. So you can call me, you can text me if you have any questions, and I'll be glad to help. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Tanya. The question that came up was, how long does it usually take to work with a person to get from the beginning to the end of this process? And thank you. You're so thorough. You covered the whole process.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, it can take, I would say once we get together and we start working, I'm going to connect you with a loan officer, and that can really, everything we can do start to finish in maybe 60 days. So if you want to become a homeowner this summer, that's completely doable. It is completely doable. It's going to probably take about 60 days. Now, the only thing that might take a little bit longer is if we're using a down payment assistance program like Georgia Dream. Georgia Dream might be a little bit behind in their processing, because once you have the clear to close from the mortgage company, then your paperwork still has to go to Georgia Dream or to the company that's providing the down payment assistance. So then you have to get final approval there, but that only takes a few days. But sometimes, like Georgia Dream was behind, like right at the end of the year, and it was taking like an extra week. So it usually takes a loan officer probably about 30 days to close a loan, and with the down payment assistance, that might add an extra week to the process. But from house hunting, it just depends on if you know where you want to live and we find a home you love. The house hunting part, it might take us a week, it might take us 2 weeks, it might take us 30 days, depending on how picky you are. But like I said, there is no perfect home. The key is to get your foot in the door of homeownership. But yeah, I would definitely say we can get it done in 60 days or less.
Okay, and what's the longest time that you've had to experience?
The longest time would be, I would say, maybe if if the down payment assistance program is kind of backed up, maybe about 75 days. Maybe about 75 days. But again, some of that depends on, how long it takes us to do the house hunting. Because we might make an offer on something, and from time to time we are still seeing multiple offers. You might see, a house that you love. If I take you out on a Saturday afternoon, and let's say we see 5 or 6 houses, you might not see anything that you like, that really feels like home that first Saturday. But then maybe the next Saturday, or maybe a Wednesday after work, we go out and we look at some more homes. Maybe we look at 4 homes that Wednesday, and you see a house that you really like. Now we've still got to make an offer on it. And right, we've got to make an offer on the home. We've got to wait for the seller to get back to us, or the seller's agent to get back to us. We've got to make sure that the terms that you offered match the terms that the seller is comfortable with. And there might be a little countering back and forth, but then we go under contract. So, that might be just a couple of days. It might be even less. We might make an offer on Thursday morning, and then we're under contract by Thursday afternoon. And then, maybe Saturday you're getting your home inspection done. And then maybe the following week, the loan officer is ordering the appraisal. So it can happen fast, or it can be a little slower. But yeah, I would say 60 days or less.
Okay, but thank you. I want to make sure participants, did you have any more questions before we go off? And if you do, I can change this so that you can speak. Maybe not. Okay. So it looks like we don't have any more questions. I'm going to sign off. And in closing, I would like to say thank you for coming to our Lunch and Learn today, to the audience. I'd also like to give thanks on behalf of our director, Mr. Damon Scott, and our new CEO, Ms. Lorraine Cochran Johnson. Audience, thank you so much for coming on today. We look forward to seeing you again. We have several Lunch and Learns lined up for the rest of the summer, so we look forward to seeing you. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.